Good afternoon, Mayor. You are live.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Las Cruces Planning and Zoning Commission and the Las Cruces City Council. Today is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. It's approximately 3:03 p.m. Before we get started, if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
And so I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Community Development, Mr. Larry Nichols, who's going to kind of start off everything. So Larry, you want to do that? And also for our City Council and Planning and Zoning members, I'm going to ask that the presentation go in its entirety, and then we'll have questions. Okay. All right, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, Larry Nichols, Community Development Director. And I want to recognize and thank the City Council and the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission for attending this meeting today. The meeting is going to be a kind of an update and a report on the progress that has been made on the East Lohman Development Plan. And in particular, what has been noted in your agenda as the preferred plan, meaning that this is the one that the consultant has taken and developed into what we believe will meet folks' desires and expectations. The city staff in attendance this afternoon will be myself, Tim Pitts, Dave Weir, Catherine Harrison Rogers, and Mark Miller. We have our consultant with us at Site Southwest, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves and begin their presentation. And with that, I yield the floor to Site Southwest.
Thank you, Larry.
Good afternoon, Larry. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council and all of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners that are here. We're really happy to have you here. We've been working hard on...
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry. Can you just state your name again?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. My name is George Radnovich, and I am a principal with Site Southwest. We also have with us, and I'll let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Danny.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danny Wilson. I'm a planner with Site Southwest, and I apologize if there's a bit of an echo on my end.
And I'm sorry, that was Sandy?
Danielle Wilson.
Oh, Danny Wilson. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Mario Nuno Whaling, and I'm on the landscape architecture team here at Site Southwest.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Narayana. I'm on the Site Southwest team. I'm with a firm called Civic Plan Studio. We are planners, urban designers, working with Site Southwest on this team.
I'm Michael Houston. I'm an architect and urban planner with Civic Plan Studio also, and part of the Site Southwest team.
I'm sorry, Michael, your last name again was?
Houston, but it's spelled H-U-S-T-O-N, not like the city.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Mayor and City Council and Planning and Zoning Commissioners. We're really excited to show you where the plans come. We're going to kind of whip through fairly quickly the background since, got it. Sorry about that. Through the background slides and really get to the meat of the matter, which is the preferred scenario plan. And again, this is in draft form. So for those of you who are seeing this in the public, as well as City Council and Planning and Zoning Commissioners and the Mayor, it is a draft. You'll see that it's sketchy, and we wanted to keep it that way purposely at this point so that we could still hear comments on it. I know it's the first time you're seeing the plan since you saw the 3 scenarios the last time we met, and we really want to get your input on the plan. So the goal, and Danny, if you could go to the next slide. The goal of today's presentation is really to present you with this preferred plan and to hear from all of you. What we're going to do on the entire presentation today is briefly go through the project context and the process summary that we have made for you. We're going to review the community engagement that we've had to date and go through some of those preferences that the community of Las Cruces had on the project thus far. Then we're going to show you the preferred plan, and then we'll have next steps and discussion from that. So first thing we're going to do is just provide a little context for anyone who hasn't seen the plan as of now, and we'll go through this briefly, as I mentioned. So this slide shows the context of the community that will make up this East Lohman development plan area. It's very close to a lot of amenities in Las Cruces, including the Las Cruces Dam, which is walking distance, and that open space behind it. The Las Cruces Airfield and Air Park, as well as the composting center and all of the other amenities that the city provides in that open space to the east of the project area. And it's also walking distance and very close to the new East Mesa Public Recreation Complex, which will be actually going to bid in the next week. Very close also to the communities to the south and the north in terms of neighborhoods, and it's kind of surrounded by the city on the west, the north, and the south. Next slide. This plan wasn't developed in a vacuum. We did review at great length Elevate Las Cruces, which you all approved last year. And the plan area was shown on the Elevate Las Cruces plan. You'll see it right where it says project area on the right-hand side of this slide. What we took from Elevate Las Cruces and included in our planning was a mix of residential uses from the very densely populated to the least densely populated residential neighborhoods. We also took that we were going to be providing a buffer from existing communities in our land planning, and that along with the mix of residential uses, we'll also provide a mixed use in the entire area for not just residential uses, but other land uses such as retail, commercial, and health-related improvements. Next slide. We also looked at the Lohman Avenue plan, which was developed in the year 2000. I know it's old, but it still has quite a bit of relevance, and we've highlighted our plan area in orange, or that kind of ochre color on the right-hand side. What the Lohman plan did do is establish this area as a gateway district. It also established design guidelines, and they were for architecture. They were also about the landscape and visual interest, and then the massing of buildings within the area. And we've taken that to heart as well. And that it create a real live, work, and shop environment with a mix of land uses. And we've also taken that to heart as well in our planning. This slide looks a little bit like the first one. The differences are that it's really relative to transportation. And so what we're showing in this slide is existing transportation and approved transportation corridors and proposed transportation corridors. And the corridors are both for active transportation like bicycling, hiking, and walking, but also vehicular transport and even bus transport. And you can see by the little blue dot that's at the far west end of our development area, that is the transfer center for the busing that will, the public busing that will arrive at the site. And we'll show you a little bit more about that in a little while. Another thing we took from the active transportation planning that the city has already done is that 57% of the people appreciate bike lanes and want bike lanes on East Lohman. So we took that to heart as well in our planning efforts. This plan shows in a little more detail and in a zoomed in kind of view the area that we've mostly been planning. What it's showing is opportunities for the area based on the land itself and what we know about it. So those red areas, those red polygons, are showing steeply sloped sites. So those are those kind of hills and the slope going up to the top of those hills around the site, both on the south near the Little Dam Arroyo and on the north near Lohman. The other thing it's showing is that we will provide a buffer, and that's shown in that kind of earth color to the south along the edge of the arroyo. And it also acknowledges that the Little Dam Arroyo is there, as well as the South Las Cruces Arroyo. It also shows that Foothills Drive is already planned into the site. However, we'll show you how we're suggesting it be modified. And it shows you where those views are towards the Organ Mountains, which are so supreme. And it didn't get to this slide, but the views towards the Robledos are also a really important part of the site. The orange line shows the existing alignment of Foothills Drive. So you can see we're not proposing to change it very much in our planning. And then that lighter lime green color right in the middle of the site is showing that kind of hilltop area along the top of the hill where the village center will be for our land uses and the suggested land uses that we'll have for the area. So this is kind of a combination slide, and what it's showing is some of what the team on the retail and market analysis side developed, and some of what we took as our kind of goal or our vision for the area. And you can see it's divided into three pieces. Those pieces were developed based on that market study. And the market study told us that 20% of that site should be devoted to retail, office, and or hospitality, like hospitals, like hotels. So that 20% primarily, and in a very general way, is towards the Lohman side of the project. Another thing it told us is that 80% of the site should be residential. And so what we've developed are two types of residential for the most part, but they're divided into for sale pieces and then for rent pieces. And what we decided on with your help is that about 50% of the site will be devoted to the missing middle, a little bit higher density. We're not talking about 4 and 5 stories, but we're talking about a higher density than typical residential, and we've got some ideas for that. And then about 30% of that 80% that's left would be detached residential, more similar to the subdivision to the south and those neighborhoods to the north. So those units are shown at the left-hand side of this slide, and those were all based on the market study that RCLCO provided for us. So now I'm going to turn it over to Danny, and she is going to describe the community engagement that we've had so far on the project. Danny?
Yeah, thank you, George. Appreciate that. So in addition to conducting these analyses,
excuse me, Danny, I know he introduced you, but can you just state your name? You just need to just say your name. You don't have to say who you're with, but just your name.
By all means, I'm Danny Wilson, and it is really a joy to be here this afternoon presenting this plan, and really excited to build on what we've already engaged, which I'll summarize just briefly here. So we wanted to make sure that the East Lohman plan is a plan that is for and by the community, and that their goals, their needs are really embedded into the outcome that you'll see today. So to summarize some of those pieces of engagement that we've engaged in so far, back in August, we had several stakeholder meetings with key folks from the area, including businesses and realtors, developers, economic development representatives, and neighbors. This culminated after we conducted the existing conditions analysis with a work session, which was held with City Council in November. Building on this, it segued nicely into a community charrette that we held in December over the course of 3 days, and then finalized in a shared plan on the 4th day, shared 3 plans on the 4th day in January. And also happening concurrently during this time, we launched our project website, planeastlohman.com, where we would share regular updates with the public about plan development, ways that folks could engage. And then finally, as we begin to move further along in the process, we'll share updated plans as well. In addition to this, we had a vision survey that was open through the month of December and into January. Over 370 people responded to that survey. And you'll see a quick summary of the results from that survey here in the next few slides. So starting quickly, some of the feedback that we heard during that community charrette, again, this was a pretty intensive 4-day period where we quickly took the ideas of the community, iterated onto them, and developed 3 design scenarios, which you'll see shortly. So these were the 3 ideas, which may be familiar to some of you who participated in those days. The first scenario really centered on this idea of population health. So creating a plan that revolved around a healthy village concept, providing lots of services to folks that enabled healthy living and movement through the space. It's building on, again, those adjacencies to the Mountain View Regional Medical Center there. The second idea was more of a traditional neighborhood. So this one was really structured in a way that promoted a lot of missing middle housing. There was a central green, a promenade that really acted as a spine for the plan itself so that people could gather and use that shared space. And then the third scenario was the conservation neighborhood, which was really focusing on how to preserve and maintain the natural habitat and drainage flows within the site. So you'll see it's rather small, but this arroyo and then also these drainage sections that sort of finger up into the site in a way that allows us to maintain those even around the existing development. So this slide here, in addition to the 3 scenarios, we introduced 9 ideas for different design concepts that we could incorporate to any one of those plans. And these ideas you'll see listed here very lightly, looking at, again, that focus on health, this pedestrian village concept, so enabling the housing and commercial features to be mixed in a way that people could easily walk and bike throughout this space without having to access their car. Similarly, the micromobility loop is another method that we thought might help to move people throughout this space without having to access their vehicle. Jumping down to the promenade, again, that's that idea of creating a green shared space that allows us to also preserve those really nice linear views of the Organ Mountains off to the east. This terraced entry was an idea where we were beginning to address that steep slope where the site meets East Lohman Avenue in a way that allows us to both preserve that and not just cut right into the side of that slope, and also create a really nice usable space out of it. The missing middle housing, I won't go into too much detail because we're going to talk about that a bit more later, but again, it's that idea of incorporating this housing that's sort of somewhere between an apartment complex and single family residential. The habitat preservation is, again, that maintenance of the arroyos and drainages and the environment that is so lovely in that natural desert landscape. And then the detached residential is more single family housing, more traditional that we see there. And then the neighborhood center is this idea where you're bringing people together around a commercial development that perhaps takes the parking and relegates it to a different area. So you're pulling the buildings up to the street and creating really lovely shared spaces and community spaces that can be used there by pedestrians, and not just emphasizing the needs of the vehicle within that space. And these preferences were ranked actually during the community meeting. So the 5 was the highest preference score, where I love this idea. This was the idea. And the 1 indicated that people were not too crazy about the idea. And you can see that all of these ideas ranked over that neutral position where people were in favor of them. But then a few rows to the top, including this preservation of the arroyos and the habitat, looking at the neighborhood center, the missing middle housing, and then also the pedestrian village. And then finally, we wanted to see if this site was a good idea for a few other ideas that we had. Again, that mixed income housing ranked high for folks, missing middle and mixed income housing. And people really wanted to make use of that natural topography again. And then we asked for an overall ranking of those scenario ideas, and we saw that that population health was really the winner here, followed very closely by the conservation neighborhood. And then very briefly, I'm just going to summarize a few highlights from those vision survey results, which was open for just over a month, and we received 370 responses there from community members. And so this is just a quick summary of a few of the open-ended suggestions that we had from folks, and it really reinforces some of these ideas that we've already talked about, where we're thinking about drainage, we're thinking about traffic, we're creating meaningful places for people to gather and hang out safely. We're focusing on that missing middle housing, and you'll see that show up here in the next few slides. So when thinking about safety in particular, people are really in favor of having buffered bike lanes and sidewalks separated from the streets, especially along East Lohman. And when asking about pedestrian facilities, what makes the most sense to allow for that safe crossing? People are in favor of the lighted crosswalk with the refuge to ensure a safe crossing. And then when just thinking about the appropriate scale of development, especially as we're getting closer to the Lohman corridor, folks are in favor of a mix of stories, so 1 to 4 stories, but making sure it's sort of stepped back to really be sensitive to the street front, and then also adjacent development. And then finally, when it comes to different types of development and amenities that folks want to see, restaurants with outdoor dining was the overwhelming favored response here. And so finally, this brings me to the vision that we've arrived at for the East Lohman area. And it's really to do a few things here, a few goals. One is to build on those existing medical uses, making use of these adjacencies with our neighbors and the hospital developments to the north. The second is to provide that mix of housing types and really make sure that it accommodates a range of incomes and then also a range of ages. So different life stages will be able to find a place within East Lohman. We're integrating with the existing terrain and creating natural trails along those. And then finally, of course, we're building in a way that is healthy and sustainable to overall create this mixed-use neighborhood center that serves both the area resident needs and also those regional visitor needs. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike to talk a little bit more about that preferred plan.
Thanks, Danny.
Great, thank you, Danny. Once again, I'm Michael Houston, and next slide, please. So this is our current plan, and again, this is kind of a work in progress. In fact, we hadn't planned on kind of having this intermediate meeting at this point, but the folks at the city wisely thought that it was good for you guys to see this plan, even though it's in progress, and to give us some comments before we get too far. So the plan shows the streets in white, and then we've color coded some of the general uses. And I want to point out that because you've got a very well-connected street grid and open space grid, the uses can kind of be a little bit flexible, and they can move from kind of one zone to the other. So even though we've color coded the plan, it's not necessarily set in stone. Next slide, please. And then these are the ways that we've incorporated elements of the vision statement that Danny just read. So, you know, connecting to the existing medical uses. So we've clustered those purple areas are medical related uses, kind of clustered those as close as possible to the existing hospital. Next. We've really focused on housing options, the missing middle and some detached residential, thinking that the higher density housing could maybe go kind of on top of the ridge or the mesa, if you will, and then we would transition to smaller scale as we move towards the neighborhood to the south. Next. And then incorporating the natural environment, so utilizing the arroyo and kind of extending it up into the plan was very important. And you'll see that we've drawn in, sketched in some trail networks that can be used. So you could actually be on a bike in the arroyo and bike right or walk right into the neighborhood and connect through the neighborhood. Next. And then creating this neighborhood center. And we think Paseo de Oñate has a lot of potential to be kind of a really nice neighborhood gathering place that can serve the neighborhoods of the south, but really to all of the neighborhoods around the area. Next. And this is just an annotated plan. So I'll go through it really quickly, starting from the west. So you can see down on the far west end, we've extended Roadrunner and thought that that was the good location for the transit center, the transfer center. And we utilized one of your existing facilities to determine the size of that. So that's what we've shown there. And also you could put the building kind of on the end, and as you come down Roadrunner, you would have a nice civic building there at the end of the axis. You'll see we have 3 potential hotel sites. We don't know if we're going to have 1 or 2 hotels, but we thought that the hotels needed to be around Lohman, clustered around Lohman and Oñate, where they'd have more visibility. Moving up to the east and north, you'll see again the medical uses there. And we also had in some of the other plans this idea of a terraced gateway, which we think is really important. Instead of cutting into the hillside, if you remember, we're proposing to do a nice landscape entrance drive that would actually go up to the top of the hill, and you would have most of the development kind of sitting up there, kind of looking down on Lohman, which I think would be really nice. Another element that we've incorporated is what we've labeled an urban block. So we don't think there's enough, retail to do blocks and blocks of kind of mixed use intensive development. But we're thinking if we could get one really nice urban block that maybe has some sandwich places and restaurants maybe on the ground floor and something else above, that would be really nice, and it kind of hooks into the green space. And then to focus on the central green space. So this was an element that kind of transformed from the promenade scheme. If you remember, the promenade scheme had a very long linear green that was oriented towards the mountains. So in this version, we thought in terms of implementation, it might be better to kind of condense that into a small park or a square. But it still has, you see it kind of flares out towards the east. So we're looking at the views of the mountains. So when you come into that green space, you'd actually have a nice view of the mountains there. Next slide, please. And then up in the upper left are some of the programmatic elements that the marketing study identified. So starting with the health services, 20 to 40,000 square feet of health services. I think actually we've shown a little bit more than that on our plan, but again, those uses can kind of fluctuate because of the block structure that we've set up. 120 to 240 key hotels, so that's either 1 or 2 hotels. Some mixed use or some mixed commercial. So we really kind of concentrated the commercial down on Oñate and the corner of Oñate and Lohman, but also there's a potential, there's the large site up at the northeast corner that could also have some of this commercial activity. Again, the transit center is there. The missing middle housing and the detached housing are in the orange and yellow. And of course, plenty of open space to kind of tie it all together. Next. And then if you remember the 9 big ideas, so we had 3 big ideas per plan. And since everybody liked all of those ideas, we were tasked with kind of combining those 9 into this plan. So I think we've done a pretty good job of taking those ideas that people liked and finding a place for them in this new plan. So everything from the neighborhood center to the terraced entry to the focus on health and missing middle, all of those elements, I think we can incorporate into this final version. And I believe that's where I hand off. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Mario Nuno Whalen, and I'll be talking about plan identity a little bit. And what we want to do in this section is highlight some of the layers to the plan and some of the ideas that we think are really unique to this development, or could be very unique to this planning area. And if move forward, really provide an identity for the East Lohman area. And just to reiterate, a lot of these came from those big ideas that we presented to the public, and then really moved forward with the ones that worked well with the site. So we'll go through some of let's just jump into it. So this shows an example of what that missing middle housing could look like, and especially in the area that Mike identified as the pedestrian village or the village neighborhood. So you can see this could be composed of smaller units, either 1 or 2 story, clustered around these pedestrian passages. And this is showing four different housing types on just a 30 by 40 foot footprint. And so just on that small footprint, you could get everything from a 900 foot cottage all the way to a 2,000 square foot home. So using a very small development space, a lot of options with the missing middle housing. Next slide, please. And then this showing some views of what that pedestrian village might look like. And as you can see, the various housing types clustered together. And in this one, like what we were showing at the north of the site, the feel would be if we kept cars to the sides or maybe cars at the rears of the buildings, it allows for these ample open spaces. You can see the sort of small private open spaces in front of each building, and then these large gathering areas that are well shaded and provide a lot of community space. Next slide, please. And then here's just a few examples of other developments that show a variety of housing options. So one, we have the Sivano community in Tucson, and in Sivano, they really built in or leaned into this idea of being a desert community, prioritizing open space and trails, sustainable architecture, and at the same time, they integrated mixed use with some commercial areas and civic areas. There's such as a school in the community. And then there's the Montecillo development in El Paso, another live, work, play community that successfully integrated mixed use. And they have options like condos, townhouses, apartments, and then they have various options, some for rent and some for purchase. Cul-de-sac is one that's currently in progress in Tempe, just outside Phoenix. And they've really leaned into this idea of a car-free community. So there they've kept all of sort of the streets and parking on the exterior of the community, and then created these completely pedestrian walking communities and live work areas within the interior. And then the last one here, Holiday, is in Boulder, and the plan graphic here at the top shows what Holiday looks like. And as you can see with Holiday, what they've done really well is really tried to provide a mix of housing types for various income levels. So on the graphic here, you can see the red is the commercial, yellow is mixed use, the blue is attached residential housing, and then the lighter green areas are the single family or more traditional single family. So they've really mixed it together and built these around these sort of shared open spaces. Next, please. And then the last, or one of the other layers we wanted to talk about that we think is a strong asset to the East Lohman area is this idea of connectivity. So to show the active transportation plan again here, you can see the East Lohman slated for separated bike lanes and improvements. There's already quite a few trails in the area, and then there's our approved plans for expanding that trail network. So improved trails along the South Las Cruces Arroyo, in the Las Cruces Dam. And then there's already a multi-use path going up the north end of Sonoma Ranch. So we wanted to really get a sense of where the connectivity exists currently, and then bring that into the planning area, as you can see on the next slide. So zooming in, this shows sort of an overlay of the street network and the active transportation network that we're envisioning for the East Lohman area. So along East Lohman, you'd have the separated bike lanes, and then coming along Paseo de Oñate, which goes down into the Canyon Point community, proposed bike lanes along there, and then that central corridor that runs right through the site, also having bike lanes, and then really providing an extensive network of multi-use trails. And this can be a range of options, so very naturalistic bike path type trails along the arroyo to the south, and then using the existing arroyos as open space, providing trail networks that really connect both the community to the south and residents and users within the East Lohman area to the central and sort of commercial corridors. Next, please. And this section shows what that might look like. So this is a section of East Lohman, but this is applicable to some of the many of the shared streets in the planning area. So you can see really trying to integrate the topography of the site and capture stormwater where possible. So green medians in between lanes, and then using the sides of the streets for bioswales with landscape improvements, providing as much shade as possible, and then creating these safe buffered bike lanes and walking areas on the outskirts. Next slide, please. And then, as we talked about in the big ideas scenario, this is big ideas that were presented in the 3 different options. We wanted to show what that micro mobility loop might look like overlaid on the preferred plan. And this sort of builds on a growing trend of folks having a kind of a growing appetite for transit and alternative transportation options, and maybe less attachment to personal cars and needing to drive everywhere. So thinking about autonomous vehicles and small shuttles within the site, as well as e-scooters, shared bikes, e-bikes. And so this shows how that might work on the site. So we'd have stops at the transit center, these commercial shopping areas, the commercial corridors, hotel, medical center, and then bringing it over into the more residential components of the site. Next slide, please. And the idea with this is the micro mobility loops, these can expand sort of as development expands within the site. So as things move northward, or as the plan grows, extending that loop to include Walmart and the medical offices north and east of the existing medical center, and then future shopping areas along Sonoma Ranch. And then lastly, just wanted to highlight the layer of open space areas in the plan. And I think we going through the different draft scenarios and getting feedback from folks, and how a lot of people really liked having density on the one hand, but loved what the conservation plan did in terms of building around the existing drainages and the preserving the healthy landscapes. We tried to cluster housing, the detached housing around these arroyos, and build these communities so that they responded to that and allowed trail networks to go in there. So you can see the largest arroyo down to the south, and then various green spaces using the smaller drainages that come down from Foothills Drive, the sort of central gathering park, the central park of the mixed use area. And then folks really responded to the terraced entry and sort of using that as a mix of green spaces. This could be pocket parks, this could be small little gathering areas that maybe the medical center staff and visitors could use. And then the last one being the existing drainage basin, building upon the existing drainage basin that runs along Roadrunner, and taking that a step further into a shared green space. And I will hand it over to Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario. Again, my name is Jay Narayana. I'm going to be presenting the zoning framework. Again, we have this great vision for this development on East Lohman. A lot of the property is owned by the city, so the city does have some control, but the idea is that we don't want this vision to just remain on the shelf. We want to make sure that it can be implemented through a zoning framework that's based on leveraging the market potential, allowing some flexibility, but really balancing the need for some predictability of development, because as the city sells or disposes of property, you want to make sure that everyone is playing from the same blueprint, and there is value that's added for everyone building on an overall vision. So next slide. So a lot of what you have around here is very familiar. It's what's on the left, where you have buildings that are set back and parking is in front. the building and along the roadways. So, and the vision we want to achieve is really what's on the right, where the buildings are closer to the street and you have parking behind. So how do we get from what's on the left to the right? So it's really about reframing how we look at zoning and looking at the form of development that's implemented. Next slide. So on the left, you have single-use buildings that are set back, parking along the roadways. It's mainly auto-oriented. So if you think about East Lohman right now, it's fairly auto-oriented. If you're on the street walking on Lohman, most people maybe think that your car broke down somewhere and you really have no business walking on the roadway. But we want to make it more easy to walk and attract multiple modes, as you talked about this great investment of the multi-mobility loop and also the trails, and the city has a big investment on this property and the need for realizing the potential for a lot of uses and making sure that's implemented. Next slide. So the idea of zoning, we're looking at it more of a form-based code type zoning framework that establishes different character areas or different zones that have different forms. The whole East Lohman district is one district, but not it's not a one-size-fits-all zoning tool. You do have different nuances of different use types and different intensities of development based on where you are. The neighborhood center may take a different feel. The neighborhood that's the detached housing may look different and feel different. We want to make sure that there is some street connectivity that's thought of, that as development happens, you actually end up with a connected street network and pedestrian network. There is a lot of detail in our vision, so we want to make sure a lot of that is translated through the zoning tool. Next slide. So you remember this is the preferred scenario. If you think about how we would go about creating the zoning framework for this scenario, the next slide. So one area would be the civic, that we are treating it a little bit differently because it is a unique use. That's a bus transfer station, which is a public use. We know that there are some special needs in terms of circulation for the buses, connectivity that's needed with the light there at Roadrunner. So next slide. Then the Lohman Gateway. The reason we are identifying this as a different character area is because we want to make sure that the intensity of the development, maybe this is where we have the highest intensity of development. Maybe it's 5-story because it is kind of lower down on the hill. We want this intersection to kind of create almost an interesting kind of landmark for East Lohman. So people know that you're in a special area. So you'd want a mix of all kinds of uses, including the hotel, commercial, health-related, mixed use, and residential. Next. So this would be the kinds of development that we're envisioning. So when you translate the zoning tool, we would want to make sure that the design standards would implement some version of this. It won't exactly be like this, but we want to make sure that the elements here are reflected. Next. And the health campus, we know this is going to be fairly unique. It may be one developer who comes forward. It may include senior living, some commercial office, doctors' offices, other health-related uses that we don't really have a crystal ball to envision right now. Next slide. Again, it could include some institutional uses, but also residential. These are some images of what that kind of development could look like. Next. And the neighborhood itself, that's the mixed missing middle neighborhood. We talked about the examples of Tempe, Arizona, and with cul-de-sac or Savano or Monteseo. We want to make sure those precedents and the design standards for that are translated into zoning. It may be height standards for 3-story on top of the mesa there on the highest point of the site, and then maybe some smaller scale commercial development. When Mike described the whole idea of having restaurants and more of an urban block closer to the health campus, that may be a location where you focus some ground floor commercial uses in your zoning. Next. This could be the image of what that the village neighborhood could look like. It's a mix of missing middle and commercial uses. Next. And the last would be the detached residential neighborhood. The idea for this is to match the scale of the residential neighborhood, which is single family, but allowing a little more gentle density. It could be 1 to 4 units, duplexes, triplexes, but still keeping with the scale of the neighborhood. Maybe it's a 2-story maximum, having maybe some larger lots, some smaller lots, maybe accessory dwelling units, and really having a mix, but that's more compatible with the neighborhood to the south. Next. So this would be the image of what the standards would implement. Next. With that, I'll hand it over to Mike to talk about the next steps.
Thank you.
That's me. Okay, next. Michael Houston again here. So I think we have just 2 slides, but what we did is when you're talking about implementation, it helps to break out the plan into its two basic components. So in urban planning, we always think of the civic realm or the public realm, which includes the streets and open spaces and infrastructure. And then the private realm, which is the development that happens within the private property boundaries. So to help with the implementation, we've got one slide that kind of highlights the different components of the civic realm. And we've numbered those there. So really the next step needs to be, or we recommend, is that you think about doing some very preliminary engineering and study of these different infrastructure components. Probably the most important would be the East Lohman corridor, where you look at the separated bike lanes that have been identified in the earlier plans and the feasibility of this kind of terraced entryway. And you don't want to obviously go directly into full-blown engineering. You just need to do enough to get a handle on the feasibility and the cost. And you know, knowing the cost, getting an estimate on that is like a big step in getting it implemented. And then another component would be Paseo de Oñate. We've indicated a need for bike lanes and sidewalks as part of the redevelopment there. If we get some neighborhood commercial along there. Foothill Drives is kind of a different animal. You could go ahead and do some very preliminary engineering and design on that portion now, or you could kind of put that off and let's say one developer comes along to do this whole neighborhood area, that could come later as part of that private development. So it's kind of in the middle zone. And that would be the same with the Arroyo, I think. You could do some preliminary engineering now, or you could kind of put that off until the residential component of the development happens. So again, Lohman and Oñate are kind of the 2 key elements that we think needs more study in the short term rather than the long term. Next. And then within the private realm, this kind of goes back to what Jay had just talked about. So it's putting in place a zoning code or a plan development, some sort of performance criteria, so that as you either sell off portions or you lease portions of the site, there's some guidelines there on not only the way the buildings might look and what materials they would have, but picking up on the street connectivity and the trail connectivity. Because most times in conventional development, you have a developer come in and they just look at their own site and they really don't connect to their neighbors. So that would be a big component of the code, would be requiring these, again, performance criteria so that one development has to connect to another. And I didn't point it out earlier, but when we were looking at the preferred plan, but you see little lines there, especially in the purple areas. And so there are just kind of notional ideas of how lots could start being partitioned off and you know, into, let's say 2-acre segments or 1-acre segments. You might have a variety of sizes, but we want to start thinking about designing streets, and so that they're based on real criteria of what a developer, a building developer might be looking for. And is there another slide, or is that?
There's one more, and I was going to take that one, Mike.
Okay.
And this is the last slide, everyone. We just wanted to give you a quick rundown of next steps.
And I take it that's George speaking?
I'm sorry, George Radnovich again. Sorry, Mayor. And George Radnovich, Site Southwest. So we're almost done with the planning. We'll be finalizing the draft plan in the next month or so. In May and June, we'll be presenting the final plan to City Council, Planning and Zoning, and obviously to the public for last comments. And then we'll present the plan in final form for adoption in June, July timeframe. The plan that we have right now is a final draft, and we'll be working on the sections that we presented to you today over the next month, and as we receive feedback from you both today and in the near future. So with that, we'll leave it up for discussion and comments, questions, and anything you might have for us.
Okay, thanks, George. Before we go to council and P&Z, can you go back a couple slides? I just want to clarify a couple things, please. One more. There you go, right there. Oh, no, can you go back again? There you go. Okay, so on number 4, the north side of Lohman, I think you have it designated as BLM property. So immediately to the left, I guess, and you're looking at it, immediately west of that, that used to be a landfill also.
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of that?
We were.
Okay, so you feel that item 4 could still be because that side, I have to admit, versus the other side where what the city cleaned up,
Mm-hmm.
now that side is really, really, really bad. There's a lot of stuff there. That's why I don't think we cleaned it. It was just a lot. And so, but you feel that that's still buildable though?
It would have to be mitigated. The landfill would have to be mitigated in order to do that, Mayor. But yes, it could be. And the other side is, as you know, a lot more buildable. And one of the past plans, I believe it was the East Lohman plan, designated that number 4 on the north as and I think that you knew this when you designated it that way, as a community garden and a desert landscape garden. So it could be that. The reason we saw a hotel on that site, if the market required it, was because this hotel, wherever it ends up, would be close to the medical center and be there for people that might be there visiting loved ones. And
of course, right. And then the second thing is, and I don't know if Larry or David can chime in on this, but I seem to recall, oh gosh, at least 15 years or ago, that there was a limitation on the number of stories. I think it was 36 feet or 3 stories. Now that may be just applying to residential, like an apartment complex, but I thought it applied to both residential and commercial, because you all would put 3 or 4 stories. And so probably to keep that commitment to the residents, because we may want to just stay with 3. But again, council can always change it, but it was implemented back in 2003, 2004, around that area. Mm-hmm. And it was to protect, obviously, the beautiful view of the Oregons. And so council at that time thought that, okay, 3 stories was the maximum. In fact, there's a green building on Roadrunner Parkway that's probably no more than 3 stories. And I often wonder if that was the reason why they did it. That's 3 stories. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Now I'm going to open it up to members of the council and commission. So it looks like we have Councilor Sorg and then Councilor Abeta-Stubbe.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Abeta-Stubbe can go first if she would like.
Okay, Councilor, thank you. Councilor Abeta-Stubbe.
Thank you. And thank you to
Site Southwest and Civic Plan, everybody for the great presentation. A couple of questions related mostly towards pedestrian and transportation. One of the items that you were looking at was that of the bike lanes, the walkability, and I know that we have had a resolution for complete streets. And Larry, this might for you too. Does our coding now reflect those changes, which would tie into the stuff that we have here, or would we still need to be working on that type of coding?
Mayor and Council Bejestew, Larry Nichols, you know that we are at this time, we are going through a zoning update with our consultant. And it's interesting to know that we have this East Lohman plan developing as well as that review coming forward. And I think the number of those items are going to be addressed concurrently. Have Dave Weir chime in on this because he's been working with both of these plans. But Dave, what say you?
Thank you, Larry. Mayor and city councilors, the coding does not have specific requirements for complete streets. That's a policy. But what's unique about this particular property are a couple of points. One, it is owned by the city. So as development goes forward, you can put requirements on how you would like to see it. And two, it's currently zoned plan unit development without basically a holding zone or open space. So as you go forward and entitle, what we call entitle this property, you could incorporate those standards and have the requirements as called out in the plan for pedestrian, bicycles, transit, micro transit elements in your actual zoning or development standards for this property.
And that was David Ware speaking.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also wanted to know, I like the idea of making sure if we do have any community centers, those types of gathering spaces, open parks, if there's ability to have that middle, the missing middle, or if we're able to do any sort of affordable housing, to have those kind of connected together so that individuals are able to walk easily to those areas, especially if we're going to have senior sites too. And the only last thing that I wanted to bring up, and I just recall it from a different meeting we had, the existing community right to the south, I remember that there was some concerns about traffic flow in areas, I believe. And so I actually really appreciate having some of the other neighborhoods where they're placed, because I think that would have a higher traffic, and so it seems to separate things out a bit more. So I do really like seeing that. And that's all from me, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilor Sorg.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Southwest for the presentation. And it looks like you've done a very good job. I think we can make this 21st century city here, 21st century planning, which is something I'm looking forward to. Having all these aspects such as stormwater capture, missing middle housing, affordable housing. In fact, we should have a target of 20% of all the housing in this development being affordable housing. Habitat preservation rather. The active transportation, including TOD, transit-oriented development, form-based code. I'm so glad to see that here too. I was looking for the connection for the existing neighborhoods, the ones to the south, for bike and foot traffic. And I see there's some nice connections you have put in there. But also, I hope we can kind of squeeze in other neighborhoods to the north and to the west or southwest of this development, get a connection there somehow to get to this development. A couple of things that came to my mind that wasn't mentioned, in fact, more than a couple. We talked about in the public input that we held, possibly having a pedestrian bridge to go across Lohman to the hospital and the medical offices there. A pedestrian bridge, I should say. Did I say that? Bridge, I meant to say, where people wouldn't have to fight traffic to get across, especially in cases where people might be in wheelchairs or so forth. And then when you showed the slide that had those on the hill, showed those steps that were kind of contoured up the side of a hill, brought to mind a street in San Francisco called Lombardi Street. I would think it'd be awfully cool if we could put a Lombardi Street in there on that hill. We could have it our own Las Cruces Lombardi Street. And but there is one more unique opportunity in this development that would be like no other development, at least not in Las Cruces, maybe in a lot of places across the southwestern nation. We could have this be a net zero community for all the buildings that are built there. That's a net zero energy community. And so just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, a net zero home, for example, is a home that creates all the energy it uses. In short, it means there is no electric bill. The net zero home means that when you take the amount of energy a home creates, then subtract the amount of energy the home uses, it equals zero. And we could make this whole community a net zero community where we would not be putting any greenhouse gases into the air in this community. Because we want houses that are all wired for total electric use. We want them to have wired for solar PV installed on the top of the buildings or anywhere else that it can be. And we want all the buildings to have outlets for electric vehicles. And so I think this is one thing that would be quite unique, and I would encourage the council and the staff and the mayor here to support a net zero community. One last thing, you have on the map there a street called Foothills Drive. Don't we already have a Foothills Drive in this city? Question for our staff.
Yes, we do.
Okay, staff.
That was Councilor Flores.
Right.
No, that voice just sounds like me. It's not really.
Mayor,
So
City Council.
I'm kind of curious in how the name Foothills Drive got put in there.
Mayor and City Council, this is David Weir again. That's a remnant. The old Foothills Drive used to go through this property out to the another landfill site. And so all the maps still identify it as the right-of-way from Foothills, but that has that right-of-way has been redirected, and it actually heads north of Lohman and comes out on Roadrunner Parkway. So as we'll correct that as the plan is updated and finalized.
Okay, I assumed you would. I just had to bring it out so we all know. Getting back to the net zero buildings, you can make net zero buildings even on affordable housing. When I was visiting Austin, Texas for a National League of Cities convention, we were taken to a net zero development, not a development, but a small, I guess there was 3 or 4 units that had, I think they were like duplexes, and they were all net zero and they were all affordable housing. And so it can be done. And so therefore I'm encouraging our council to support a net zero community. Okay, Mayor? I think that's all for right now, maybe more later.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bencomo?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks everyone. It was great to see the presentation again. They were at our housing PRC either last month or the month before. Zoom time is weird, I'm not sure. But I did just have a couple questions. I'm curious in terms of the conversation we just had yesterday at our work session with the water impact fees and that changing and the split being 50-50, that obviously will impact this development, right? Is there any room for potential waivers, particularly for the affordable housing development that could go here that, could be an incentive for developers to want to, build more of those affordable housing units, more of those missing middle units?
Councilor, let me just kind of chime in on this one. So one of the things that kind of been exploring is if we were to enter into a public-private partnership with a developer, and obviously one of the things that the developer does is they have to put in the infrastructure, the sewer system, the water system, all the different lines. And then after they get it all done, they give it to the city, but they first pay for it up front. So what we may want to look at is we put in that infrastructure, the city, that's our contribution in return for them to provide so much affordable housing, because that's that much less money that they're going to have to put in. And so that may be a way to do this. And then they have to provide so much affordable housing because we've put in the infrastructure. And then I can't tell you how many times I get from the deans of the university or professors of engineering school that they want to use their engineers to help do real life examples. And so we might be able to use them as well in conjunction with our engineers there at the city to help install this so they can get real life experience. And so we may be able to keep the cost down on that as well. Does that?
Yeah, that's great ideas, Mayor. I think this project can be very visionary and it can be very collaborative in terms of like really getting it done in the way that we hope it gets done. And so I think those are great ideas. I don't know if I thought I heard someone before I started speaking.
And was there another question?
Yeah, and then my last question is, I don't know if Natalie is on or even our PIO, but I think it's really important that we start thinking now in terms of just like messaging strategies. I think that there's a lot of misinformation. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about affordable housing and those kinds of projects from a big part of our community. I'm afraid that particularly in this area that might come up and folks, pushing against this kind of development here. And so I think it's important that we start thinking about messaging strategies that, really lift up the need for this, that really lift up how thoughtful this process is and why, why affordable housing developments are necessary. And so I've been talking to Natalie in our housing PRC about this for a while, but I just want to make sure, and I don't know if Southwest Consultants, if you all provide any of those kinds of things. I just think it's an important piece to consider for the future.
No, Councilor, you bring up a good point, and I think maybe we'll change the name of it from necessarily affordable housing to just mixed income housing. And I want to use the example of Southwest Airlines and those free tickets. A long time ago, I used to get some free tickets, and then there are people who, when you go on a flight, there's going to be some that pay full price. There's going to be some who got great discounts, and some are for free, because they have these coupons. But the plane is a brand new plane, and that basically, if I circle back to what I was saying about that public-private partnership, these are beautiful structures. Some will pay the regular price, and some are going to pay a very discounted price because that developer that's the agreement that they'll get to take with the city if we provide this type of infrastructure. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that they won't have to pay. And in return, the bottom line, they're going to be looking at the bottom line. When they build out a project, they want a bottom line. But if we provide this, then their bottom line goes up. And then how it comes down so it comes back to where they first started, is that's how they provide certain housing at certain income levels. But you're not going to know, because you're not, the outside's going to be great. I mean, everything's going to be good. And it's just going to be certain people are going to get it for a little bit cheaper. And then that's it. And I think that's really the way to go. You know, as a kid growing up here, there was a place where near Lynn Middle School that you knew that was an area. And that's what we want to get away from. You know, you just want to be able to go to an area that you don't know who lives there and how much they pay for rent. Or, you know, I think that's what you're getting at.
And Mayor and Council, we did consider mixed affordability in the housing, and we've heard that repeatedly from the public and from Council and Planning and Zoning. And that is part of the planning effort that we've gone through. And it also is included in the market study. They identified it as an important need as well when RCLCO did the market study for us. So we do have it planned in as mixed use housing, as the mayor said. So I just wanted to assure you of that.
Thank you. And so
that was George talking, right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, George Radnovich. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Council.
No, it's okay. And yes, I think this is really great. I think my point is more in terms of how are we communicating and messaging this to the community so that it's so that we're getting rid of some of those, you know, old school tropes and myths about what affordable housing is.
I think that's a really good point, Councilor. Thank you.
I think we have some airline props at our movie studio. Maybe you guys can do a movie and you won't know who pays what, and that's how you kind of translate it. Before I get to Commissioner Thomas, we have Larry Nichols has his hand up. Larry?
But we don't have a studio anymore.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Larry Nichols, for the record, Larry Nichols. And Councilor Bencomo, I would like to answer a couple of your comments there. And, you know, we have been really heavily engaged in talking about affordable housing, particularly the last couple of years. And one of the challenges that I presented to Site Southwest when we first initiated this project was give us a master plan that offers a point of difference. Let's not repeat everything that maybe has been done before, because it didn't really address the instead of affordable housing. I think the mayor had a very good point when he used the term mixed income housing, because that's really what we need to head towards. Yes, Natalie Green with the affordable housing component that she has in the now economic development department, but has in the, you know, the funding availability. That's one thing. You mentioned earlier, is there some way we could waive? I have to be perfectly candid with you. We don't have a lot of ability to waive fees, but we can find ways of deferring them or finding a different alternative means of methods of addressing them. And so I think that's where we could really spend our effort. But the idea of having a development like this that has a point of difference, and maybe the point of difference is what Councilor Sorg mentioned. Maybe we have a means of our mixed income housing having reduction in utility bills. You know, it's not only affordable housing or multiple levels of income housing. The initial cost, it's the operation cost as well. So maybe we concentrate on that. But I think there's this master plan is visionary. You know, when the mayor first brought this parcel of land to us and said, let's do something with this. I got calls from all kinds of developers and real estate agents and folks saying, this is a very attractive parcel of land for a development. Let's do it right, but also let's make it unique. An idea of mixing housing types and availability of income housing types. I think that's our point of difference with this. I think we really have an opportunity there. And I know that the consultant is striving for that. The community development department is striving for that. I think we have an opportunity here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Larry. Councilor Bencomo, was that it? Yeah. Before I get to Commissioner Thomas, I just want to take a quick moment to, and I know they're not listening, but former Albuquerque Mayor R.J. Berry and I call him the dean of the developers, Eddie Benz. It wasn't for the fact that Eddie was willing to sell us some land for the Veterans Park, and Mayor R.J. Berry was able to do a little swap, and then he threw this land in here, which we essentially paid like $500,000 for. And I have to tell you, that land went in 1999 for $10 a square foot. There's 110 acres. That puts us at over $50 million in value for a fraction of that. So just wanted to send those two gentlemen thanks. So Commissioner Sharon Thomas, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is Sharon Thomas for the record. So I'm also concerned about the affordable housing. I don't know if you can go back to that slide, but it looks on the graphics like the missing middle is over on one part and the single family is someplace else. And can we not have some missing middle integrated with the single family? I mean, I've seen that in other places. And I don't see anything actually about affordable housing. I think what Councilor Sorg said, a percentage that gets integrated across the area. I mean, I really like, as the mayor's talking about, to see the missing middle and the affordable to be spread out across the whole development, so that you can't, as he said, say, oh, that part over there is where those people live. I'm not really seeing that. Am I missing something here, or?
I might be able to answer that. This is Michael Houston again. So a couple of things. One, as Jay mentioned, even in that yellow area, we're proposing that multiple units be permitted within a single lot, but we are suggesting that the scale of those buildings still look more like a detached structure of maybe 2 stories maximum, but it could still be a duplex, triplex. It's still basically a missing middle typology, but we're showing that the scale of it is going to be more compatible with the neighborhood to the south. So, and even though there's a difference between the yellow area and the orange, those things could be in a more detailed plan, a more nuanced difference. So there's going to be more interplay between the two. As to how you implement that, I think that would come in when you get into the zoning aspect. If you do a form-based code or a plan development and you establish those performance criteria, that could be one of the components of the performance criteria that you have. Right now, we're focusing more on the open space and the street network and these transitions, but that's kind of an element of the performance criteria. And in the best case scenario, you would have a mix. You'd have market rate next to affordable housing, and you really wouldn't know the difference. That was the whole idea of the pedestrian neighborhood. And another thing I was going to mention about the pedestrian neighborhood, since we were looking at that slide that had the 4 housing types, is that, that's a concept that we kind of invented for this project, and we've taken it inspiration from other projects, but we haven't done this exact idea. But we do think that this concept could be tried out maybe in other locations in the city. So if you have land that's near downtown or within the city limits that you want to do a pilot project and try out this housing type, it might be a good way to start before you commit to doing a larger area. Hope that helped.
Also, I'd like to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that I think you're right. We haven't shown on any of these slides.
Excuse me, who's speaking?
I'm sorry. This is George Radnovich at Site Southwest. Thank you, Mayor. That'll be the last time you have to prompt me.
I'm going to start fining you $1.
It's happened before. Commissioner Thomas, I think you're right. We haven't posted on any of our drawings for the presentation. However, we have included it in the report, a mixed income or an affordable housing component. And I think we really need to add that to the presentation and to the drawings to make sure that it's covered. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I think that's what I would ask if going forward, if you could be a little more specific about some of those ideas, because that's what I hear people saying. They want to see this mixed and not be able to tell what's the affordable and what's the, and you know, I'm a fan of the holiday development in Boulder because my sister-in-law's sister lives there. So I'm familiar with that development. And you really, really cannot tell, even though 30% of it is affordable housing. You can't pick it out. And I hope we can do that in this. Also, I didn't hear anything about high-speed internet and all. That's all going to be available here, right?
We didn't get to that level of detail in the plan at this point, but high-speed internet would be available, I believe. We'll have to check that with our city partners, and we can definitely include that in the plan as well. It's part of all planning at this point.
That would be great. You know, we just have more, even though we might be working our way out of this dilemma with COVID, you know, we have more and more people working remotely, and they're going to probably continue to do so, a lot of them. So we want to make sure that we're providing that possibility. So thank you. Those are my questions, and thank you for your answers.
Yeah, Commissioner, just a couple things. If I remember correctly, there is high-speed internet because, as you recall, the hospital is across the street, and they needed that for their, you know, to be able to download the things that they do for medical X-rays and such. And then the second thing is, and I would think that some of our the people on the team on Site Southwest is familiar with the Sawmill District there in Albuquerque, and it's possible that we may be able to incorporate on some of that land some of the same principles, so that so that they can actually own their own home there at a relatively lower rate, and then but then also prevent them from selling it at some huge profit, so that they get a modest profit if they need to sell it, and then they give it to someone, you know, they're able to sell it to someone else. So we might be able to incorporate something like that. But I think overall the whole plan, it looks great. But and then, you know, of course, that's what we're doing here today, is just kind of giving our input back and forth. Okay, so we got Commissioner Vasquez, and then Councilor Vasquez, and then Commissioner Gordon. So Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues for their thoughtful comments and questions, as well as yours, Mayor. And I'm excited to see how fast a conceptual design and project can come together when there's some real motivation to do so, right? I think for me, this has been one of the shortest planning and design phases of this type of development since I've been here in the city, and rightfully so. You know, it's a great place to develop, and you know, Mayor, I agree with you on the public-private partnership opportunities. I think we want to maximize the amount of GRT that we can get out of this property, considering the investment that we just really hit the lottery on. Much credit to you as well for that foresight to get this piece of land here. So I think, you know, taking off of perhaps on a much smaller scale what we've done with the Amador, what we were thinking about doing with the Doña Ana County Courthouse, you know, this might be on a much larger scale, but you know, I think we should definitely pursue that option as much as we can, and we retain you know, a lot of the control, obviously, of what happens there if we do that. So I want to say I support that. In terms of the affordable housing piece of things here, you Yeah, I mean, I would say that, the majority of our population in Las Cruces fits into the category of being someone who needs affordable housing. And so I just want us to remind ourselves of that, in terms of our per capita household income. Oftentimes the folks that are the most vocal against affordable housing projects, they may be the most vocal, but they are in the minority. And so we want to make sure that I think we are serving the majority of our residents as much as we can in these types of developments, and giving folks access to in an affordable way, have livable, walkable, bikeable, healthy communities is going to make us stand out from other communities. I've seen a little bit of the Metro Verde neighborhood, certainly Sonoma Ranch, and how that's been built out in its different phases. And some of those amenities that those folks have out there are terrific. The walking paths, the gyms, the big parks, that concept that we saw, I think out in Metro Verde for that, almost like a mini downtown that the developer wants to build out there, are terrific. And so I want to make sure those same amenities and that same quality of life is available to folks of different incomes. And so I think this would be a project that would allow us to do that. So I fully support the affordable housing component of this. We've done it before. I think if you look at like South Tail Shore from University up to Lohman, and if you look at the west side of Tail Shore, you have a mix of, you have $700,000, $800,000 houses with $600 a month condos on the same street, on many of those streets, and folks coexist happily, and folks are respectful of each other, and it's a beautiful, vibrant neighborhood. Part of my district is in there, right there to the east of Missouri. Sorry, I said west, really both sides, but on the east side of Lohman. And so it is possible. It is possible. And I think we can do it here as well. And we should do it. And so fully support that. And then lastly, I think this is a thoughtful process, and Site Southwest, I think, has done a great job for us, as they have in the past on other city contracts, of both engaging our community and engaging public and soliciting public input in a way that I think is meaningful, that is easy to digest, and that gives me confidence in moving forward with this project. Lastly, to Councilor Sorg's comment, I would say, yes, let's promote as much of sustainable energy production and net zero use as we can, especially if we do, retain land ownership status in this process, but certainly through the zoning process as well. But I'd say also, let's not let that be the enemy. Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? Because I think we want to make sure those homes for people are at an affordable rate, that we're able to actually attract folks. So maybe there's a good happy medium in terms of LEED certification and other types of requirements that we may include, that may be less restrictive than entirely a net zero community, but also get us to where we want to be. So thank you, Mayor. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilor. Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon, that sounds like from Batman. Commissioner Gordon.
This is Harvey Gordon. That's what they said the first night that I sat on the Planning and Zoning Commission. The chairman said maybe we should send up the bat signal, and it's just been with me ever since, I guess. I'd just like to repeat once. I've said this before. I just think another good point.
Commissioner, did I have you state your name?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I said Harvey Gordon.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I was thinking about Batman. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. I had repeated this once before about another access road. I still like the idea of having an access road onto Lohman. If you look at the word on this display that we have here, the word East Lohman, and just a little bit to the right of it, you'll see that there have been two developments of some real business property that have been put on the south side of Lohman. And in between these two are a piece of property that's been abandoned now for, many, many years. You can just see some steel girders that are there. It might be a good idea, it's somebody to think about perhaps buying that piece of property and bringing an access road down from the south side where the white is onto Lohman, just down the hill. It just would give you another access onto Lohman without having someone to go all the way around. If you could draw a line, you put a circle there, just bring that up to that little green spot. And you can see what I'm talking. Yeah, right there. Bring a line down there. That's one thought I've had, and it's just something that I would like to see, and perhaps maybe in the future, if it's a good idea, it could be done. And the other thing, as far as affordable housing, I think the one word that people have avoided saying today is stigma. And I don't like to use that word, but a lot of people think of it in that terms. But I will let that rest. But my question is, if you look at this whole parcel that we're talking about here, this whole Lohman plan, if you look at there are two large parcels of land to the west and to the north. One to the southwest of Lohman, which would border along Sonoma Ranch Boulevard. You see the big piece of property I'm talking about? That's it. There are drawn in here some roadways. Is that just for a concept, or is that the way it has to be? That's number one. Number two, on the other side of the street, on the corner of Lohman and Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, there's another large piece of property. And I understand at one time there was some interest there in putting up a assisted living facility, but I think that idea has fallen through. But I like these two pieces of property to sort of be thought of as an anchor to a mall. I think what could happen there I think all that property is privately owned. If somebody comes in and wants to develop that, how they develop that may drive what everybody else is thinking about doing on this East Lohman project. I don't know if there is any interest there now, but eventually I'm sure there will be. That piece of property, that very large piece, could very well go to somebody like Trader Joe's, possibly even a Costco. The other side is maybe a little smaller. I don't know what they do there, but to me, that's going to be a very, very important thing to happen to this project. What's going to go there? And I don't know if there has been anything said or what it actually means with those lines drawn for roads, but you can see there's an access road coming out of the project that will hook onto one of those. So I don't know exactly what it is. So it's just a thought of mine. I'd like maybe if somebody could tell me if this is just a concept or if this has to be what it's going to be when that land is developed.
This is George Radnovich with Site Southwest, Mayor, Commissioner. Commissioner Gordon, we didn't do the charge for our work was really to develop plans for that primarily city-owned portion of the property and not so much the privately owned areas. That's why we haven't touched in great detail that area. We do have some concepts that we developed early on in the project that we could take a little bit further for that area. As you know, it is privately owned, and it's the only privately owned strip between Sonoma Ranch and Lohman and south to Canyon Point. So we just didn't have that in our scope and hadn't done much with that area. But we did want to show how it could integrate into the planning that we were doing on the site that we did have charge for.
Well, this is Harvey Gordon again. I understand what you're saying, but it's just, well, I'm looking at this and just everything goes through my mind as what eventually could be there. I think what you've developed is a wonderful plan. I think I like the work you've done. I want to thank you very much for what you've done. But just a couple of thoughts, especially that I'm really concerned about that access road. I would like to see that down there. It would make it a lot easier for people to get out of the middle of that whole big parcel to get down to Lohman.
Mm-hmm. Very good comments, and this is George Radnovich again, and thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Let's see, who's next is Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Danny, Mike, George, Mario, and Jay. It's nice to see you again. I met all of you I think it was in December. Yes, December. And that was a very successful meeting, and we had a pretty good turnout. It was it was right between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It was during the holidays. It was close to Christmas, I believe. But at any rate, I want to thank you once again. And George, it's always delightful to see the work that you do at Site Southwest. I first met you, I think it was last summer, or late spring, when you presented the plan for the park at the airport, Cruces Airport. So again, thank you for your fantastic work. And I want to say that Jay, for everyone who's concerned about the housing issue, Jay, if I recall correctly, in her presentation last December, made it very clear that there would be different kinds of housing, and that it wouldn't be something that would be a glaring difference insofar as the plan, the design goes. And of course, it would be our job to make sure that we get a builder that has the design and, the architectural features, if you will. I'm not an architect. That would definitely integrate all sorts of housing. And I like to think in terms of attainable housing, and I think that whether it's rented or purchased. And so I'm very happy, Mr. Mayor, that you mentioned that perhaps it would be a mixed, what did you say? Mixed income. And that's what it is anyway. And or somebody's puppy is yappier than mine. At any rate, it's probably Sharon's little dog. At any rate, I just want to thank you, and also wanted to bring something up, and now I totally. I just wanted to mention that Jay did bring up the possibilities of our really, the ball is going to be in our, the ball will be in our, in our court. We'll be able to determine how we want those designs, and then of course Natalie Green, I hope, will be working closely all along to assure that this housing is definitely falls within the parameters of HUD for quote affordable unquote housing, and then have other designs or housing units that are really viable and attainable for those who would like to live there. I know my question, Mike, or well, any of you, but I think George always opens up, so I think I should address my question to George. So were you involved in the designs that you showed us in Colorado, Savano, Tucson, Monticello, and El Paso, and then Cul-de-sac in Tempe, and Holiday in Boulder? Did you design that? Was Site Southwest the designer?
Thank you for the good words. This is George Radnovich with Site Southwest, Councilor Flores. And we were not the designers of Cul-de-sac or Savano or the Montecillo development in El Paso.
Oh, it's Montecillo.
We did work with that developer in El Paso on that project peripherally, because we were working on what was going to be called Aldea El Paso that didn't happen or hasn't happened yet anyway. But I would like, Jay, if you're willing, I'd like you to talk to that idea of mixed income, if you could.
That was
Thanks,
George
George.
Radnovich speaking.
Jay Narayana. Again, I think one of the things we want to make sure is that the housing types themselves provide the diversity for different income types. I think the idea of having the modules where you can go from a 900 square foot to a 2,000 square foot, it gives you a range. A lot of times, the reason why housing becomes expensive and unaffordable is the size of the lot. And so once we start kind of working on eliminating some of those barriers that increase the price of housing. We want the market to deliver a more affordable product organically, and then the city participating in some of the infrastructure, kind of reducing the cost on the developer to kind of also provide that balance of housing. The problem with a lot of times with state requirements for affordable housing, that it has to meet a certain threshold, 80%, 60% of the median income, becomes that they have standards for parking, and it kind of limits the city's ability to be flexible and thinking outside the box and doing a pilot project similar to the cul-de-sac development that maybe it's a lot of times you end up with 200 units that are 70% affordable, and it looks like a suburban apartment complex, because that's what some of these developers know from a formula standpoint. They know what works and how they make money using HUD and the state affordable housing programs. So I would just kind of make sure that the vision for this is allowing for a range of duplex, townhomes, granny flats, kind of the range that not just hits just one segment of the market, but really for people, nurses and people working in the hospital industry, and looking for maybe students and other folks who have different needs in their depending on their life cycle, where they are in their life cycle.
Thank you, Jay. That's what you covered in December, and that was very well received, if I recall. I do recall. It was very well received. Thank you again, Jay. And thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I was having problems with my button there. Yeah, thank you so much, Site Southwest, for your presentation. As I was listening to it, I was thinking a few things, being a model, sort of a, being able to do innovative things in this and with this area. I love the 3 or 4, I think you mentioned, themes, the population health, the traditional neighbors, conservation neighborhoods, just building on the existing infrastructure. I do want to make note that I'm very much for at least 20% of that being affordable housing. And I think we're trying to move away from using that term and utilizing the mixed amount or mixed income housing would be really important. I've seen the renderings for the El Paso, the thing you mentioned with El Paso, and had conversations with one of the engineers or designers. I don't know what you call them, but it really was interesting, and I like to move into something like that. And I'm really interested in Mayor's great ideas, Mayor, about the private-public partnerships and building the infrastructure. To lower the costs. I think that's something that we should really consider. And Mayor, I'm not sure what your thoughts are around that. Would we have simply a different work session to speak specifically on what that might look like, or will you work with staff to get some pricing and whatnot related to that as we incorporate sort of the plans moving forward?
Yeah, let me reach out to the Dean of Engineering School, because they've asked if there's projects that their students can do. That's what they do. I mean, they work on some civil engineers, some electrical engineers. It'd be, because I haven't, after you finish, I was going to throw one more thing in there. That's why I threw in electrical engineers, but the civil engineers for sure, so they can start knowing how to develop the sewer systems and the water system, everything. I think it'd be great.
Right. And, Mayor, Councilor Sorg and I participated in a session with Arrowhead, and some of the things that the engineering department are doing, not just on the things that you've just mentioned, but the mass development moving forward, right? I'm thinking about solar. With DACC. I mean, I just think the ideas are endless. And so I want to just make sure that that doesn't get lost. I think it's really important. And then I've been hearing the form-based codes and the performance criteria. And I think, and I'm sorry if this has already been explained, I got kicked off and I had to quickly get back on. And maybe Larry Nichols talked about this now. Did you say that I know we're revamping our zoning, but are those areas that you're looking at as well? And would they be helpful in this, with this particular scenario? Larry?
Yes, Mayor and Councilor Gondra, Larry Nichols for the record. Yes, I did refer to that earlier in today's presentation. And the update of the zoning code does have a look at the design standards. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Be part of that update and review and upgrading. It hasn't been visited since 2001.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of changes come about in how we do things since then. So, the design standards are a part of that review.
So I'm thinking that would be helpful, and when they mention, very interested in hearing more about the parking in the back rather than in the front. Some of those things that I think, we just don't really see in our community, right? And something we definitely want to consider. I think, especially in those areas, if we want it to be pedestrian and bike friendly, if we're wanting for people to, get out into the natural wonders, I think all that would be really important. And to Councilor Abeta Stuvi's concern, we just heard an issue with traffic and just above that area that she mentioned. And so all that would be, I think, an important thing to consider.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and Councilor Gondra, Larry Nichols for the record. Those are, and I think Councilor Sorg and Chairman Thomas, P&Z Chairman Thomas, they're disciples of new urbanism, and this plan incorporates a lot of those concepts and ideas. So,
yeah.
So I think the building set to the street, parking behind, those type of things. We got to take advantage of those. I mean, we know that they're improvements on what we have done in the past. The plan talks about that.
So Larry, when you look at some of that, and we're looking at affordable housing, or that mixed income housing, if you will, I'll get used to saying it the other way, the mixed income housing. And you're looking at some of the limitations, or like, I don't know, I would assume there's federal state guidelines specific to that. Or is there, I guess that's my question, is those things we have to consider moving forward when we are doing mixed income housing?
Mayor and Councilor Gondra, we do have to consider those. There are very specific guidelines on how those things are developed. But I believe that we have the capacity to take those into consideration and begin to implement them into our new developments. The East Lohman is one of them. We have other projects that are being spoken about. We're talking about the El Paseo Salona corridor. It's going to, and I think Ms. Green talked about that this morning, about a project coming up in that area. So Today's presentation is on the East Lohman, but we do have citywide projects that we should begin to incorporate the thinking that you have just expressed there. And we're keeping that, we're ever mindful of that. We're going to keep that going.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. And then lastly, Mayor, you made mention about the landfill in that area. Can someone point out where that would be? And not sure that we've done the work there.
No, we haven't. We haven't.
I can point it out.
Yeah.
This is George Radnovich at Site Southwest, Councilor, and we
good, George.
Hi, Councilor Gandera.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
We just Danny just circled that area that hasn't been mitigated yet.
Okay. And I'm assuming that we definitely have to take that into consideration and the money in order to do that. So I would hope that staff would have, I don't know if Delilah or Mayor, how many acres that is and what the price would be to mitigate that. And in terms of kind of the plans and what will come first, if this is something that we should be considering now rather than later.
Yeah. Well, Mayor Pro Tem, that's currently owned by the BLM.
Uh-huh.
And it probably would be, see, the other land is the cities, right?
Right.
So that is something there that we knew that we could get our return on investment on. But BLM land, unless they gave it to us, and the goodness of their heart, I don't know. So I mean, I don't know if that's just a projected area.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something there that I bet you, I would imagine it would probably cost at least $1 million and maybe a little bit more to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very concentrated there, and there's a lot of. That's why if residents are driving up there and the sun catches it just right, you see all these little sparkles. Oh, that's glass that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that maybe staff and Mr. Peely should have conversations with our folks there at BLM and see if there's an appetite, right, for doing something in terms of giving it or selling it, whatever that would look like. And then, George, you mentioned the foothills area and that it's going to require more study. And I thought you said something like sooner rather than later. Did you say that? And what are the plans related to that in terms of studying it? Would staff have to go back to the drawing board and contract with you all or within procurement code?
Thank you, Councilor. This is George Radnovich, and thank you, Mayor. David, did you want to broach that subject?
I can. Mayor and City Council, this is David Weir, Community Development. And I think a lot of the questions you are asking about really slide into the next steps and implementation of the plan once it's developed. So once we get a consensus and we go forward with this development plan for the area, then the city will have to make a decision on how they're going to approach developing that property. Is it something that the city is going to do in-house themselves in contract with the different engineers? Is it something where we're going to put together a proposal for request for information or request for qualifications to develop that? Or are we going to market it for sale for one or multiple developers to put a team together and build the plan? So that will be the next decision point towards implementation. But first things need to be done is to reach a consensus on this plan as that this is the land use mix, this is the transportation network, these are the housing mix elements that you want to see take place. And then, like I said, there'll be another decision point with implementation. So if I was unclear on anything, please, I'd be happy to respond or answer any questions you have.
No. I just want to, I'd like to just hear sort of all the options or I think you were pretty clear on that. And sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. So I think the way this was presented is really exciting. This could definitely be where we can, put a lot of creativity in the way in which we do that. And some of the ideas already put forth are from mayor and other city councilors is what I would agree. And I definitely agree with Commissioner Thomas that we want to not single out the mixed income housing, that it should be evenly distributed right throughout. And I did hear Councilor Vasquez make mention of, the townhouses and mixed in with some very large and higher income homes, and I think those are things that are really important to me. And again, I think Commissioner Gordon did have a great suggestion about that particular piece of property that has been vacant for so many years, and looking at the opportunity of an exit entry way right out of the area. I really like that idea. It makes sense to me. And then I want to put a pitch in for Councilor Flores. She didn't make mention it, but when we have a housing committee, housing PRC meeting, she makes mention of this quite a bit. And this is about, the city sort of leasing land or the lots, if you will, and buying, and people putting property, their homes or whatever right there. I think here's a great opportunity that we might, maybe model some of that. And I think this property here, this is a great opportunity to put in a lot of concepts that we've been talking about, at least since I've been here, and longer for Mayor and Gil. So I think this is again a great concepts, and thank you, George and staff sites. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Before I get to Councilor Sorg, I have a quick question. So on the green space that's, I guess where Paseo de Oñate is, now that's that high hill, correct?
That is actually a low point in the drive from Lohman down to Canyon Point before it crosses the arroyo. There's a high point as you go from there towards the north and east, and then there's a high point.
I'm sorry. I guess I didn't mean that. That is Paseo de Oñate, the other street. If you move toward east, the next street up, I guess, or that one right there. All that green area. No.
Foothills.
Right here.
Right here. Yep.
That's the high area.
Correct.
So,
I'm sorry, Mayor. The highest point on the site, George Radnovich with Site Southwest, is that roundabout point in the middle right there. Yep.
Okay, but I'll talk about that green area. So what I was trying to get at is if there was a way to incorporate, at the time you guys were doing this, it hadn't been passed yet as law, but now there's an opportunity for community solar. And, you want to put it out of the way, and what better place than is this, because it's so high up there, and we're not gonna, reduce it. But if we could kind of get it to the point where we build it inside that area, it's out of the way, and then we can help lower the electric bills to the residents 20-30%, and that just makes it that much more attractive. Especially again going back to the mixed income, that just adds more affordability to them. So yeah, okay. So that was one thing. The second thing is at the very in the Arroyo area, the buffer, those little small white lines. Those are those walking trails?
They are.
Oh, perfect. Wow, that's great. That's excellent. And then the last thing, and I see Adrienne here. I think she's probably covering for Delilah, is during the excavation, Adrienne, were you aware, did you guys come across anything? I received an email from a professor, a biology professor, I think, from the university, wanting to know if, or thinks that there may be some prehistoric sites there or bones there. And I know we can get with them after, once we start doing the excavation, but were you aware of anything that they discovered anything while they were cleaning out those particular areas? That's to Adrienne. Because I didn't see Delilah on the call unless she's there, but. Adrienne, are you there? I thought I saw you. Well, maybe I didn't. Okay. Well, okay. Who's over the utilities? EFO.
Mayor, this is George Radovich. I don't see her on the attendee list.
EFO, when they were cleaning up, I mean, did anyone come across anything? Did anyone say anything, did utilities give you any reports of any bones that, prehistoric, anything there? I wasn't aware of any, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't there. So we'll get with that professor, and he had asked if when we start doing more excavation, if they can just be on site in case they're, they come across something. That could be kind of interesting. Okay, that's all I had. Councilor Sword?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, utilities isn't in this meeting today. I noticed all the people there. I didn't see anybody representing utilities.
Actually, this is Flores, Councilor Flores. Adrian Whitmer was on earlier in the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
In all fairness to Adrian in that department.
Well, I just wanted to emphasize again, to Councilor Vasquez in particular, I hope he's listening carefully here. The net zero buildings can be built in an affordable or a low income building. It's done all the way across the Southwest, from Austin to Phoenix and into the California. So there's many different examples of that. So we don't have to be afraid when you put all electric homes in that they will be priced out of for low income or mixed income housing. The key to a net zero building, of course, is energy efficiency. You've got to build these buildings so that they don't lose heat in the wintertime and they don't bring heat in the summertime. That insulation and efficiency is a key to make a net zero building work of any kind, whether it be housing or not. But so, Councilor Vasquez, just imagine, as Larry Nichols was saying, you're living in a home and the only utility you have to pay is your water, wastewater, and trash. You have no natural gas bill and you have no electric bill. So this makes it quite attractive to low income, any income people, in fact. So I emphasize again, we could make this whole project, everything in here, net zero buildings, whether it be commercial buildings or homes, apartment buildings, what have you. It can be done. And just imagine what that will mean to the city of Las Cruces. An excellent example for other developments all the way across the city. And of course, it lines itself with our planning for phasing out of natural gas. And so this is perfect for us, absolutely perfect. There is one part of this map here, the street, is it El Paseo Oñate? That street that goes to that neighborhood to the south. Just to the west of that, there was some trash in that part of the ground there too. I don't know how much trash. Something tells me it's not as bad as it was on the east side of that street. But anyway, that's something to keep in mind for the future. So
that area was cleaned up, Councilor. The only area that isn't ours is that little blue area. I think that's BLM still, where it says transit.
According to the utilities department, no, it was not. It was potentially thinking of putting a park in there in which we didn't have to clean it up then, in that case.
Maybe that's the part that's BLM, because there's some BLM land still out there.
Well, the BLM is on the north side of East Lohman. That's definitely BLM, but then the south side, we have that. That's part of the whole purchase from Albuquerque.
I think that's still BLM right there, where that little roundabout. I'm pretty sure, but
This is
sure
this is Michael Houston. I think I can clarify that dashed line there represents what we understand is BLM property.
Okay.
And you see, we're looking long term at maybe you acquire that and you put the two properties together and develop it. But the dashed line is just to remind us that those are the two different areas.
Anyway, all I wanted to point out, it was some trash in that part land too at one point. And unless they changed their mind and went ahead and cleaned that up without us looking.
This is George Radnovich at Site Southwest. Councilor Sorg, we did, and Mayor, we did map actually the area that was mitigated as part of our planning, and all of it so far anyway is east of the of Paseo de Oñate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I mentioned the pedestrian bridge. I suppose that's getting a little ahead of ourselves here. That's something we can always put in later, I suppose.
You know what? I just realized something, Counselor. BLM falls under the Department of Interior, and guess who's in charge of the Department of Interior?
Yeah, very good.
So
Not a problem.
Maybe I'll email her. And
okay. Good.
Send her an email and ask her if we can just have the land to have
you darn right. Yeah, I'll do something.
housing.
Okay.
And lastly, just thinking out of the box completely here, let's see if we can't put, since this is a big hill we're talking about, put a waterfall in like I have behind me right here. That would be cool. That would really set the whole property off from everything else. I thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay, well, that would be, Counselor, that's a great idea, but that would be facing Lohman. Okay, so.
Somewhere, yeah.
That would be real nice. Okay, well, I think that answers all the questions. Unless, I'm assuming that all of you forgot to put your hand down, unless you guys want another round of questions.
George Radnovich, here, Mayor. I think that Commissioner Thomas has had her hand up for a while since the first time she spoke. Commissioner, am I correct there?
I think she just took it
No,
down.
I just didn't put my hand down.
Okay.
But I do want to say I'm just so pleased with the planning you've come up here. It's something we've talked about for so long, and we've been so anxious to get something on the ground so people can see what it looks like. So, thank you very much.
And I understand that Adrienne, thank you, Commissioner. I understand Adrienne Widmer is on the phone. Adrienne, if you're there, the question was, I received an email from I believe a biology professor, and thought that they want to know if we had discovered any artifacts when they were cleaning up the area, and if not, if they could still have a chance to, when we do further dirt work, if they could kind of be available to just check out things.
It would be called surveying, Mr. Mayor. They would survey it.
Yeah, Adrienne, are you there? Okay, so she's not there. So I'm just talking to, oh, there you are. Go ahead. Adrienne?
Hi there. I'm just having some technical difficulties, so could you just repeat the last question?
I received an email from a professor at the university. He wanted to know if we discovered any artifacts when your department was cleaning up the area for, when they're remediating the area, and if not, whether or not that they could still have a chance to look at further dirt, or whenever they do more movement of dirt, and by that time it probably will be turned over to whoever we in charge the development with. But did you come across? Were you aware of any artifacts that they came across while they were cleaning up the old landfill?
No, I don't believe so, because usually if you run into artifacts, then you have to stop work and the New Mexico Historical Society has to come down and take a look at it. But if you will forward that email to us, then what we can do is make sure that they're in the loop.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so George, does this pretty much conclude today's presentation?
It does, Mayor. George Radnovich, Site Southwest. And happy to answer any other questions or provide any other information that you need. This was a really great session. I want to thank everybody for participating and for giving us some great comments and great direction. And I think we're right on track. We will look forward to also getting any public comments for those of the public who are on the call and who might have their comments as well. And I thank the mayor and all of you councilors and commissioners. Thank you, Councilor Flores and Gondara and everyone that we've, and Councilor Sorg and everyone that has spoken to us.
Yeah, looks like Mayor Pro Tem raised her hand.
I did, Mayor. Just lastly, is your website still active for this particular?
George Radnovich with Site Southwest, Mayor, councilors. Yes, it is. It's still the same location. Yep.
Okay, can you repeat the website?
Sure thing. This is Danny Wilson, Site Southwest. I was actually just going to jump to my last slide here. I plan to link to this recording once it's posted or once we have it available on YouTube with an update on the project website. And even though the survey is closed, it will remain active as we publish the draft final plan once community development has had a chance to review it. And planeastlohman.com is that website.
Good.
Thank you.
What was that? What was that, Danny? I didn't quite hear that.
Sure thing, Danny Wilson. It is planeastlohman.com.
Oh, thank you.
All one word, Councilor Flores.
Thank you, George.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you again for your presentation and our planning and zoning members who joined us. Thank you, as well as my colleagues on the council. If there's nothing further, I need a motion and a second so we can adjourn the meeting.
So moved by Flores.
Gandara, second.
Made by Councilor Flores, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. We adjourn. Christine, are you there? Yeah. Can you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. This is on the motion to adjourn the meeting. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
I think he adjourned earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gandara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, it's 5:15 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Arrivederci. Ciao.
Ciao.